Okay, so today we're going to be talking about how Spain lets go. America moves very, very quickly and is because of the downfall of Spain. And the reason why Spain is experiencing so many troubles is very simply the Napoleonic Wars accelerates their decline. Napoleon goes into Spain, tries to take it over, put his brother in charge, and basically devastates the country. They're able to get rid of him and the French, but the country is in waste, as is much of Europe. Europe is very, very weak right now. They can't do very much, and Spain is especially problematic because they own all of this territory here, all throughout South America, Caribbean, Central America, North America, including Florida, Texas, California, and so forth. And they were trying to move even farther north. But the territories that we'll be looking at today is Spanish Florida, Texas, California, and Oregon. At this time, by the time the Napoleonic Wars are over, Louisiana Purchase has already been made, so America is now this size right here. The problem with Florida is that they have, Georgia, if you remember the First Continental Congress, they couldn't attend because they were having trouble with Indians. Indians were attacking them and they needed the British help. Well, that problem has persisted, and Indians would come across the border from Spanish Florida, attack, and then run across, and we couldn't go get them. Well, after a while, America just decided, you know what, we're going to go after them anyway. Who cares about the Spanish? And another problem that they had was slaves would run away. If you're a slave, you don't want to run north because you're just running into more slave states. You don't want to run east because you're going into the ocean. And if you go west, there's still more slave holding territories in this direction. So it's the easiest way is just to go south into Spanish Florida and seek refuge there. Well, again, the Americans would go and chase them down. So to solve those two problems, America wanted Florida to cut off those two problems so they can go ahead and deal with it. And so we pressed for occupation of Florida. So we made a deal with the Spanish. We're going to give you a little bit. We're going to forgive some loans, and we're going to recognize that Texas is yours, and then you're going to give up your rights to Oregon. So Britain, America, and Spain all claim this territory right here. And Spain said, okay, we won't press our claim anymore. We're going to draw the border right here, and this is Spain's, and this is America or Britain. Well, you guys fight over it now. America, you have this. America and Britain, you go ahead and fight over this. Um, so that doesn't quite work out as Spain expects because then Spain, since they can't really hold on to its territories, and inspired by America breaking away from Britain, all these territories in South America and Central America start breaking away from Spain and making their own countries. Mexico is one of them. So Mexico takes over Texas and California. Um, a couple of quick points before we go any further. We've got St. Augustine is in Florida, and it was the first permanent European settlement in what is now the United States. We remember Williamsburg being the first permanent settlement by the English, but there were other Europeans here in what will become the United States, and the first permanent settlement by European, which are the Spanish, is St. Augustine right here on Florida. Um, they also set up a lot of missions. They were very big into being Catholic, converting remember, they were the conquistadors. Spanish were the conquistadors, and they wanted to conquer and enslave and take over and make sure that all of the Native Americans became Catholic. They were very much into conversion. So they built these missions. You can see it looks like an old church. But it was a church slash school where they'd bring in the Native Americans and teach them Spanish, teach them how to be Catholic, and how to do things in the European way to convert them over to Spanish culture. All right, so in 1819, Spain gives Florida to us, and then the next territory that we're going to look at is Texas. Now, we don't get Texas until 1845, but something happens 9 years earlier in 1836 where Texas becomes its own territory, its own country. This happens because Mexico doesn't have enough people to farm and tend the land. So they invite Americans to immigrate into what is then Mexico with the condition that they speak Spanish, they convert to Catholicism, they follow the Spanish routine, and also they did not allow slaves. And this was a big sticking point where the Americans wanted to bring in their slaves to help work the land, and Mexico said, no, we're not going to allow that. And that and other reasons were why the Texans decide to rebel against Mexico. These are mostly former Americans. They become Texans, part of Mexican citizens, and then they decide to break away and make their own country. During this war, there's a mission called the Alamo, and the Alamo was guarded by a few Texans, and the Mexicans came in and wiped them out, completely destroyed the place, killed everybody. And so the Texans from then on would say, "Remember the Alamo," whenever they fight, kind of like fight for revenge. And they won their independence in 1836 and became the Republic of Texas. They were their own country. 9 years later, they would ask to join the United States and we would annex them and they would become part of America. There's a problem though. We think that the border of Texas is on the Rio Grande, whereas the Mexicans believe that the border is farther north on another river. Well, war is starting to brew between Mexico and America, but before it does, once we get this Texas, we quickly make a treaty with Britain to give us the Oregon Territory. Now, Oregon Territory extended way up into the north, so Canada got the northern part. We set our border right here, and we got this part of the Oregon Territory. America now wants California. We got Texas, we got Oregon, and now we want California, so we want to buy it from them. But this dispute down here in Texas precipitates a war, and so America and Mexico begin fighting. America wins, and we get California and the Southwest Territories in 1848. So you can see here in 3 years, we get Texas, Oregon, and California, and rapidly expand to what we recognize as the continental United States. A few years later, we get the Gadsden Purchase, which is just to make sure that southern states could send a train line through here underneath the Rocky Mountains because they didn't want to go into the free states to ship things out to California. So that comes in later, but that's neither here nor there, so don't worry about that. That won't be on the quiz. But do remember missions. St. Augustine right here in Florida was the first permanent settlement. Mission is a building that served as a church and school where priests taught the American Indians about Christianity and European ways of doing things. Remember that the Adams-Onis Treaty gave us Florida in 1819. We got Texas in an annexation. Texas joins us after winning its own independence, and they were inspired by what the event at Alamo, where the Mexicans won the battle, wiped out the Americans, but then, or the Texans, I should say. I keep saying Americans. It's pretty close. The Texans then want revenge against the Mexicans. They always say, "Remember the Alamo" whenever they're fighting, and they defeat the Mexicans and win their independence, and then join us in 1845. 1 year later, Oregon is settled. We set our border, our northern border here with Britain and Canada, and we get this Oregon Territory. And then with this dispute in Texas, we fight a war with Mexico and take California and the Northwest Territories in 1848. One last note about the Oregon Territory. The Oregon Territory is supremely important because we're trying to get out west, and we've got this problem with the Rocky Mountains. They're very, very tall, very rugged, as we saw in Chapter 1, very difficult to get through. But there's a trail that goes through Oregon that allows people to get horses and wagons through. That's the Oregon Trail, and that's why we're really interested in this Oregon Territory. We're willing to give up Vancouver and parts of Canada because this trail is so important. So keep that in mind. The Oregon Trail is why we're so interested in the Oregon Territory. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.